Namaste. Hi, I'm Bruce Benefiel, and welcome to One World. Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of One World. Namaste, just in case you haven't heard about the word, comes from the Brahmi language, which predates Sanskrit, and it actually means, I worship that which is within you, or the divine in me worships the divine in you. Think about what we could do if we thought about that every time we met the eyes of someone walking on the street, or anywhere we were, or are. Think of what changes we could make. Anyway, this week's guests are Carol Gibbons, who is a clothing designer, an artist, and a social activist, and Dennis Alley, who's a member of the Wisdom Dancers. And without further ado, welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Carol, now, in your venue of social activism, you've kind of combined that along with the artistry. How did you eventually, or how did you work into that? What prompted you to go the direction that you did as far as your own activity?
I think probably it started back as a youngster. I always knew at a very early age that things weren't just right. Society talks one way and acts another way, and this was always a matter of confusion to me. And as I got older, I got angrier about it. And as I got angrier, I became really quite inappropriate. I struck out in frustration over the world saying one thing and acting another. And
I can see how that would happen.
I eventually became an alcoholic and acted out a lot of my anger over this, and I eventually went into recovery for that, and I came to the realization that the world is small, life is short, and that the values that I had as a youngster were as valid today as they were then. And that from my point of view, and that's the only one I really have, that life was to be lived a day at a time, and that whoever came into life a day at a time, that the values and the consideration, respect were to be shared.
Right.
The dignity, the respect, that I can't change other people, but I can only be an example. I can only live my own life by giving the love and dignity and respect to life and people that I would like in return, but give it unconditionally means whether I get it in return or not is not the problem.
So actually, what I'm hearing you say is you took that inner turmoil
And turned it
around and did something positive
and
with
learned
it.
how to live within this world that we have. There will always be turmoil. Always be people going against
We don't have
it.
challenge, we don't have growth.
But I don't have to be the one to challenge. I don't have to lock horns with reality or people who differ in view. I came to the realization the only peace that comes in my life is what I live and give to other people.
That's true. Thank you. Dennis, how did you get involved? I mean, you've been a member of the Wisdom Dancers forever. I mean, your family's been involved with that. How did that come about, and what role have you played in that, and what prompted you to continue that?
Coming from a traditional family, like on a reservation, come to find out the public need to be educated about our Indian life, our song and dance. And you talk about your program, One World. I seen a writing the other day where we live in two worlds, the Indian, with one heartbeat. My kids wear Indian moccasins one day, and they wear Reebok tennis shoes the next when they go to college. So
Right.
We are a performing arts family, started in the Bay Area, and you might say Quincy Jones, and can't think of the other singer's name right now. But anyway, we started there, a school assembly, and we performed in the Cow Palace, and it just grew from there. We didn't plan on becoming a performing arts family. it happened and it snowballed, and we do it full time now, and love the Phoenix area, because when the tourists come here, they want to see cowboys and Indians.
Yeah, they do.
You know, and I'm the biggest Indian in town, so anyway, my children, they can perform without me. They can sing, they can narrate what our costumes and songs and dance mean, the meaning of it. And I have 8 grandchildren when we're all together, and 7 children, and the boys, like we could do 2 shows in one night at 2 different locations. My kids are educated to perform the Wisdom Indian Dancers performance by themselves. And this coming weekend, Memorial Weekend, we're doing another, when I say another, about volume 3, you might say, of Dennis Alley's Wisdom Indian Dancers video. The last one was at Monument Valley, and this one coming up is at, the last one was at the Grand Canyon. The next one will be at Monument Valley. And we're just very proud to be American Indian and wear our Indian clothes, our Indian feathers with pride. And then yet, as a grandfather, I got my master's degree in social work and been unemployed ever since. No, no, I would just say that. But I work for Indian Health Service, and I'm a substance abuse program specialist. And everybody's getting educated about alcohol and drugs today.
Sure.
You know, it's not the old drunken Indian we used to hear many years ago. Everybody's problem if you abuse it.
Right.
Know? So I do that during the daytime. I'm more or less of a health educator, you might say.
Now, with the dances and your storytelling, I think, like you mentioned, one of the things that the world needs is to be educated on the native philosophy and the spiritual and traditional foundations for which it's based. Did you find that when you were starting that you had a swelling of this within you that was able to come forth and go outward?
It was there, and my people back in Oklahoma never knew me to be a performer and be outspoken in our cultural ways. I was raised in a Native American church, you might say. Then when the white Assembly of God and all these religions came in, somewhere along there it said powwows were no good. Our Indian culture wasn't in the Bible, you know. So later on, I became a singer from my grandparents were teaching me to sing, and my kids later on got married and have children and started performing. And it, like I said, just snowballed. And yes, there was something inside of me. I wanted to share our beautiful culture and heritage and educate the people. We're not just show people neither. We're very traditional. There's Indian powwows like in Prescott and different places around the country where we're the host Southern drum. That means we sing all the songs the Southern style. There's a Northern style. And I have children that we dance in the traditional way and go to our ceremonials, and then yet to survive and to have a big family and to educate my children through colleges and universities. You have to pay for books and fees and tuition. Indian education don't cover a lot of that, and so we use those our Indian culture as a performing arts family to pay for books and fees and tuition, and educate my children to have a good life. Like, I'm going to retire from Indian Health Service in a couple of years. You know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to kick back and take it easy. I'm going to get my doctor's degree.
There you go.
And we're going to start our own program beside our performing arts family. I'm going to have my own program. I have my kids called Youth Talking to Youth.
And you've got the background that supports all
Right.
that, and the respect in both communities. to support that too.
I'm a professional in the white man world too.
Yeah.
And you got to earn your way in our Indian way. I'm a veteran and father, grandfather, trying to be a role model for other people and my children too. And we get into education as far as partying and peer pressure, and it's okay to drink, as long as it's social drinking. Carol here became an alcoholic, and she has been sober 20 years now. And way back there, I came that close to becoming an alcoholic. Then I got children and raised them as a single father.
Right.
And now it all come into place.
Speaking of that, Carol, and what you went through then, in coming out of that, there had to have been a lot of fears that you encountered and had to overcome within yourself. Was there any that stand out in your mind and what you did to overcome them?
I think that the alcoholism was just so insidious and progressive. My denial was so extensive that it's kind of frightening for me to look back and see that, a retarded canary could have looked at my track record and said, "You," and I was into all this denial almost to death. And it took me many years to work through the rage and anger and confusion and to get on the right track.
Was there something within those many years, a turning point or a thought that came to you that really turned the tide, so to speak?
Well, I think that the realization, the acceptance, knowing I was an alcoholic and totally accepting it were two different things. When I finally came to the realization, it didn't really matter whether I liked that fact or not. It was a fact of life. And coming to the realization,
Sometimes
I only
it's
had,
what is.
The alternative was grim, treat it or die.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be incarcerated or die, and I had to watch several children go through alcoholism. My personal feeling is that probably there was a hereditary factor in my family. My grandfather's Cherokee, and I never drank normally. My children that had it never drank normally. And whether it's hereditary or whatever is immaterial.
So
Once
you drank
have
abnormally?
it, that's it. Abnormally from day one, compared to who?
Right.
But no, the recovery has been good, and probably had I not had to go into recovery and take such an honest look at life and myself and reality and how I relate to life and people, I don't think that I would have the comfort level with life that I have today.
Speaking of the honest look at life,
Yeah.
how do you see that happening around you in the work that you're doing now?
You mean in my designing or just in my general living?
Your design, I don't know that it's separate. I mean,
Probably it isn't.
It's all connected.
Life just becomes simpler and easier. I no longer have to intellectualize or run or hide or color things the way I want them colored, pound that round peg into the square hole. Life becomes very simplistic. I just live it simply. I ask God as I understand Him for wisdom and strength and understanding, and ask Him to help me to live that day with whoever comes into it, giving, not asking questions, just giving forth, being a good listener.
And to go easy with the two before.
Yeah. Well, you use that to get their attention, right. Then you use the psychology. But just living very simply and honestly. Simplicity and honesty. When you lie, you have to tell two to cover that and two to cover each of those, so that honesty just becomes much easier, and it gives you a sense of inner freedom.
Sure.
Just knowing that, hey, I might be wrong, but I don't deliberately.
And it seems that honesty and
play with
openness
people.
sometimes will put you on the edge in dealing with someone too, because when you're being honest and open with someone, you're laying everything out, and if there's a problem, you're acknowledging it, and if there's resistance or denial or whatever, you're taking a chance on that person not being able to stay there with you and deal with it non-emotionally.
That's right. But I find that honesty is really the easier way to go, because and you find different depths of honesty. It isn't just whether or not you're holding up the local bank in the corner.
Right.
You know, it's how do you really feel, and are you do you have the courage to say how you feel, how you believe, and but you
Being
don't have to be
authentic.
blunt and cruel about it either.
Right. Right.
You know, you can be diplomatic and not compromise the truth. So it's an ongoing learning process. For
Sure
me.
is.
Yeah,
That
I
it
enjoy
is.
it.
Dennis, now, with what you've done with the wisdom dancers, are there any specific fears that you had to overcome? I mean, you weren't really an actor or a performer to begin with, so I would imagine, I know from my perspective, in coming from, not being able to sit next to someone without shaking on the inside, to being able to get up and play music or be here. That takes something. Did you have to go through that too?
Yes. The fear of bringing your family out into the public, learning your culture, learning songs, learning the dances, being a single dad, sending them to school, and then years, I just thought of the guy that we performed for was Marvin Gaye, Quincy
Okay.
Jones. Now,
Right.
it's a beautiful short story. There was a Reverend Cecil Williams, one of the benefit of his Methodist church in San Francisco, and you could picture the Cow Palace full of benefit, and every aisle coming down was Cubans, black, Chinese, Japanese, you name it, people from all walks of life danced down that aisle. And there was a drummer, a Cuban drummer, and black entertainers, and we all danced on the floor together. And Marvin Gaye and Quincy Jones was there, and Reverend Cecil Williams, and he's still going in San Francisco. And I felt that, hey, I belong here,
Sure.
I belong here. I'm representing at this particular event, I'm representing with my young family the Native American, and that made you want to do better and overcome fears. And one of the fears was moving from that San Francisco to Denver to get my college degree. I'm 10 years in the United States Marine Corps and never had a chance to get a college education of financial, no scholarships or whatever, but to I can tell you one fear, right? I got discharged out of the Marines 28 years old, and one fear is to look at a Sunday paper in the one ads and not be qualified to do anything. That's scary. You're almost 30 years old. So then I used the VA benefits to go to college, and then I deal with kids now with career uncertainties.
Right.
Some of my children now are going to go to college, but they're really not exactly sure of what they want to be down the road.
Sure.
And I've seen a TV show one time or somewhere, someone asked a kid, don't you ever get tired of being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up, So that's natural, man.
Sure.
But for me, I even know the place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, looking at the one ad and not being qualified to do anything. Then later on, I worked at the employment office, and I can tell when I say, what do you do? What are your qualifications? And if they say, oh, just anything will do, that means they don't know nothing. They don't know nothing. If they say, oh, just anything will do. Well, I said that one time probably. Oh, just anything. Labor, and I got soft hands, man. I don't labor for nobody. I went and got my college education and went on and got my master's degree as a grandfather. So I overcame that fear of education and looking at a newspaper and not be qualified. So I share this with many children, young people from all walks of life. It's okay to have a career uncertainty.
Sure.
But once you find it, and then I always say, and I tell my boys, do something that you enjoy doing. Me, I'm 57 years old. I look forward to going to work. I can't wait to get to work, and I love that feeling. Because in my life, in the military and other places, I hated for Sunday night to come because Monday I hated to go to work.
Sure.
I hated my boss, or my boss hated me. Or I'm in a good position now to retire, overcome fear, and then too it's years, seniority, longevity, experience to get better,
And the kids, too, when they're younger, I mean, how can we be, I say we as children, be expected to know what the heck we want to do for the rest of our lives without having any worldly experience whatsoever? I mean, realistically, we've got the high school education, maybe. How can that be expected? Now, how do you see that, the work that you're doing, how do you see the overcoming of the fears and the education and things like that, how do you see that being reflected in the Native American community?
The fear is there. You might say in a Native American community, I used to work at Phoenix Indian High School. Kids would come to the reservation. A lot of kids would overcome those fears because they got concerts here. Everybody loves music,
Right.
some kind of music, country and western.
It's the language of the soul.
Yeah. So our kids get educated that they overcoming fears, that they want a fairly good automobile, they want to dress good, they want to go to the state fair, they want to go to concerts, they want a good way of life. I'm talking about just an average life, not being rich or anything, but they want to be educated in like the DeVry Institute or vocational training or a college education. Now that they do have a chance to amount to something and make something of themselves, and then you'll have, in the Marine Corps, they say you always have your 10%. 10% will go back to the reservation, become the reservation drunk or the town drunk, but a lot of them will say, hey man, I don't want that. Those are my people back there, and those are my roots, you might say, but I want the urban life and a good education to enjoy the urban
Live in both
life.
worlds.
Yeah, right. And some of them yet too will get educated and go back to the reservation and work and not become the town drunk or reservation drunk. But so today in the Indian community, in a lot of areas, it's better than it was in the old days. There's more education going around.
Sure.
What I've been dealing with lately, the Red Cross has been training myself and some Native American students on HIV virus. And we've been going to classes since January. Last Saturday was our last session. You talk about like Arthur Ashe, Magic Johnson, and there's AIDS in our Indian community. Our Native is beginning to multiply and it's beginning to surface. So we're working with that of these students that are graduating May 31st. They're going to go out into schools in their communities, Native American communities, and educate them.
Right.
As far as, this is today, 1992. I didn't have to worry about AIDS when I was a teenager,
It's a tough one.
It is.
Carol, how do you see things with rapidly coming close to our closing time? How do you see things coming together on a global scale and multiculturally? What kind of signs do you see that people are coming together and working towards helping each other through these tough times, the alcoholism, the social concerns?
I think there's a lot of change. I watch, and the Berlin Wall is down. The Soviet Union has changed. There's change, radical change going on about us. I heard today that even some of the gangs involved in the LA riot were celebrating a truce. Now where that'll go, who knows? But I just watch, and I see a lot of people, and I see young groups in Phoenix talking about, the violence has to stop. The differences have to stop. It's time. It's time for all of us. We have to learn to live together. But it's more than that. We have an opportunity. People are beginning to realize that a different culture, a different race does not mean wrong, bad. It just means different. And we're given an opportunity to get richer from sharing, not
Right,
being
to
the
honor
same,
it.
but sharing our differences.
Right.
And I'm seeing little changes. It's like when a rain starts and you just hear the first few drops on a metal roof, and then pretty soon you hear more. And this is how I see it. There have been a few drops hit that metal roof of change, and now I see and hear and I listen. And all around the world, there are just more drops of change and more acceptance. And I think that these things grow just like the negativity grew in the past, but I think we're nurturing. People are frightened, and with good cause, because of AIDS and violence and everything, but people are saying it doesn't have to be this way.
What's your best practical advice?
I think that each individual has to look into their soul and say, what can I contribute to life on a daily basis at a very simple level? What can I do to better understand the person next to me, the life that I'm living, the way I'm living it, the ecology of the world? What can I do? And just go from there, and then share what you discover with another person.
That's good.
Just one-to-one.
That's what it takes. Dennis, how about you? How do you see things coming together, and what's your best practical advice? We're just almost out of time.
Okay, we're almost out of time. I think that I just heard it on the news today that the younger generation is going to be more educated and get along better than what's going on today. Of prejudice, living in Phoenix, Arizona. Maybe I might be in New York or San Francisco, and they say, oh, Arizona, you don't have no Martin Luther King Day, you know. So maybe at the election we'll have a Martin Luther King Day. But I could see down the road, I have grandchildren, and my children are young adults, and I think with the sports, playing football in college and being educated and in every circle of life, that I think our younger ones are going to be more educated and can get along. You see a lot of little blonde girls with a lot of black guys today,
Right.
you know.
Right.
Back in the old days, man, I didn't like that, you know. I didn't like that. You see Indian girls with black guys. Now it's all...
It's changed.
Yeah, it's all changed now.
What's your best advice for everyday living?
For everyday living is to get an education, and when I say live a good life, I'm talking about not becoming breaking and entering or burglary
Right.
or crime.
Do the best you can.
Yeah, do the best you can with an education, a good the spirituality. You got to have you got to believe in a great spirit in your heart, and take it from there. You know?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks.
And thank you all. Please, if you got time, give us a call at 602-264-0986. Let us know what's happening. Or drop us a line, care of One World, P.O. Box 32035, Phoenix, Arizona, 85064. We got to get out of here. I'm Bruce Benefield. Namaste.